Last night, my father-in-law scoffed at my pathetic excuse for dinner, saying, "A woman like you would have been thrown out of my house. Completely useless." Have you ever been in a situation where the universe decides, with absolutely no filter, to show you exactly where you stand with your family? Where you just know you've been delivered a message, loud and clear, about your worth? Yeah, that was me last Thursday. And let me tell you, it wasn't just awkward, it felt like a declaration of war. Okay, so, usually, I can deal with family dinners. You know, the typical awkwardness. You make some jokes, maybe sneak off for a wine break in the bathroom to text your group chat about how you'd rather be scrolling TikToks in bed. But last night, that wasn't it. Last night was different. It felt like the universe decided to show me exactly where I stood in my own family. And trust me, I got the message loud and clear. Every Thursday, my in-laws come over. And let's be real, it's never fun, but I put up with it. My husband, Kieran, insists it's good for the kids. We have a girl and a boy, both under 10. And look, I'm not trying to deprive them of family, but I just wish it didn't always feel like an exam I hadn't studied for. Kieran's parents. They're old school. Like his dad, William, genuinely believes women should be grateful just to be kept. And his mom, Alexa, she's the type who'll fix your hair mid-sentence or hit you with a, "Oh, you're wearing that." Then smile innocently so you can't even get mad. I try to keep things light. I make easy dinners because I'm usually drained by Thursday, which always feels like a weird hump day after a long week. So, yesterday, I whipped up a pasta bake. Just pasta, some veggies, cheese, bake it, done. The kids like it, it's simple, and honestly, after 3 school calls and a full-blown meltdown over a lost water bottle before noon, I was not about to go full master chef. The second they walked in, I could feel it. William was in one of his moods. You know the kind, huffing, puffing, acting like everything's a personal insult to his entire existence. He's been extra lately, probably because he's getting older and feels like no one listens to him. Spoiler alert, we don't, because he never says anything worth hearing. So, dinner starts. I'm just trying to serve the food, and he's making these faces, like he's sniffing something rotten. The kids start giggling, which of course, just fuels him. Now he's got an audience. He pokes at the pasta bake and says, "This the best you can do?" And honestly, I wasn't even surprised. He's said worse. But then, Kieran, instead of shutting it down, or even just ignoring it, he gets this little smirk and says something about how I only married him for his name and whatever property he thinks we have. Which is just wild because we've got a mortgage and a car that barely passes inspection every year. I tried to jump in, like, "Can we not do this in front of the kids?" But Kieran cut me off. He looked right at me and said, "Maybe if you put half as much effort into the marriage as you do into feeling sorry for yourself, we'd have a decent meal." Yeah. In front of everyone. No one said a word. Alexa just poured herself another glass of wine and pretended to scroll on her phone. The kids. They went completely silent, which, honestly, was worse than the giggling. I just sat there. What else was I supposed to do? If I said anything, I was dramatic. If I left, I was making a scene. And it kept going. William brought up my job, how it's cute that I work, but I should really focus on the home, because that's what real women do. For the record, my mom worked, and somehow our house didn't burn down. Then he started in on how I dress. Something about how leggings aren't real pants, and back in his day, women cared about appearance. It's not like I looked bad. I was literally just in comfy clothes after running errands and cleaning all day. Alexa still didn't say anything. Just stared at the wall behind me like she was waiting for it to move. Kieran just sat there, picking at his food, acting like this was all normal, like he was above it all. I tried to get the kids to eat, but they were watching everything, and I know they're old enough to know when something's deeply wrong. My daughter started to say she liked the food, and William just talked right over her. Of course she does. Kids don't know any better. I wanted to tell him to shut up. But I was just so tired. I didn't feel like fighting. I just wanted dinner to end. So, I grabbed my phone and started scrolling. Checked Instagram. Texted my sister. Kill me. She sent back a meme, which, honestly, did nothing. I heard William say something about my generation being soft, and how, if I'd been in his house, I'd have been sent packing a long time ago. And Kieran? He was laughing. Actually laughing. I didn't even recognize him. I get that he's always trying to get his dad's approval, but why? Why did it have to be at my expense? It made no sense. At some point, I just stood up and started collecting plates. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed something to do. Alexa actually said I looked upset, and I just ignored her. I took the plates and dumped them in the sink. I didn't slam them, but I definitely didn't care if they chipped. Kieran asked if I was going to cry, which was insane because I was literally just trying to get through the night without screaming. I told him I was fine. He rolled his eyes. The kids went to their room after dessert. I let them take their tablets because, honestly, screw screen time limits tonight. Alexa tried to make some small talk about the weather, like none of this had just happened. William was muttering about how the world's gone mad. And Kieran, the absolute audacity, actually asked, "What's for dinner tomorrow?" I almost laughed. I told him I didn't know. Maybe you should ask your dad for recipes. He didn't think it was funny. I finished the dishes and just went to our room. Locked the door. I don't even know why. Habit, maybe. I scrolled TikTok for about an hour, mostly just out of spite. Kieran came in later, didn't say anything, just changed and went to sleep. I lay there, wide awake, thinking about how I was supposed to just act normal after that. I didn't sleep. I lay there, wide awake, thinking about how I was supposed to just act normal after that. I didn't sleep. I thought about leaving. Not even like, leave, just going somewhere for the weekend, taking the kids, getting some space. But then I thought about how much work that would be, and if I was just running away or actually doing something. I thought about what my friends would say, but honestly, most of them don't really get it. They all just say, that's just how in-laws are, or Kieran's just stressed maybe. So yeah, that's where I was. I felt like I was waiting for something to snap. Like I couldn't just let this go, but I had no idea what to do next. I kept thinking about how easy it was for them to just tear me down in my own house, like I was some inconvenience, just there to make food and take up space. I kept thinking about how Kieran looked at me like he was embarrassed by me, and how William clearly hated me for not being his version of a woman. And Alexa. She just let it all happen because she's been doing that her whole life. I'm not saying I'm some perfect wife or mom. I definitely have my days where I just want to scroll my phone and let the house go to hell. I forget stuff. I get cranky. I dress for comfort, not for anyone else. But I don't think I deserve to be treated like that. Not by them. And definitely not by Kieran. I kept thinking about what would happen if I just stopped doing everything. Like, if I just let them see what it's like when I'm not holding it all together. Anyway, sorry if this is just a rant. I just needed to get it out somewhere. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but I know I can't just keep letting this happen. I'm not the person who just takes it and smiles. Not anymore. First update, so I guess I'm back. And honestly, it's wild how fast things can go sideways once you stop pretending everything's fine. Like, far sideways. I woke up the morning after that dinner, and the house just felt off. Kieran was already up, acting like nothing had happened. Making his coffee, scrolling his phone at the counter. He actually offered me the last of the oat milk like he was doing me some huge favor. I just stared at him, because it's wild how someone can be so clueless and so smug all at the same time. The kids were weirdly quiet, too. That's never the vibe in our house. Usually, it's pure chaos. Someone's fighting over a charger, someone else is yelling about a missing hoodie. But nope. They just ate cereal, barely talking, just peeking at me, then at Kieran. I asked my daughter if she wanted her blue sneakers, her absolute favorite. She just shrugged. My son even tried to make a joke about the pasta from last night. At least it didn't have peas. But then he looked at me and just stopped. So yeah, they knew something was up. I got everyone out the door for school drop-off and honestly, just sat in my car for like 10 minutes afterward. Checked my phone, scrolled through Reddit, got halfway through a thread about someone's neighbor drama before I snapped out of it. I realized I was just numb. I texted my friend Tara. We're not super close, but she's the kind of person who always has something to say, and she's not afraid to call people out. I sent her a quick, "Family dinner was a disaster. Want to get coffee?" She said, "Sure." So, I went. We met up at this always packed coffee shop, but somehow, there was a table free. I told her what happened, and she just stared at me for a second, then went off. She said, "You know your FIL is a dinosaur, and your husband's always been a little too eager to impress him." I kind of laughed, but she wasn't wrong. She asked why I let them do that to me, and I didn't have an answer. I just mumbled, "It's easier to ignore it than fight every time." But even I knew that was a lie, to be honest. She said, "Maybe it's easier, but it's not better." And she was right. By the time I got home, Kieran had already texted me like 3 times, asking if I was coming back for lunch. We never do lunch together. I don't know what that was about. I ignored it. I started thinking about what I'd make for dinner, and then I just stopped. Like, why am I planning dinner for people who treat me like the help? No. Not today. So, I didn't cook at all. I ordered pizza for the kids, pepperoni for my son, cheese for my daughter, mostly because I didn't want to deal with complaints. Kieran came home, took one look at the pizza boxes, and asked if I was done sulking. I looked him right in the eye and said, "Maybe I'm just done, period." He rolled his eyes, muttered something about how I never let things go. I just said, "Yeah, I'm not letting this go. Not this time, actually." Then his mom, Alexa, showed up. She barely knocked, just walked in like always, acting all concerned, but you could tell she was mostly there to smooth things over and get back to her regularly scheduled programming. She asked if we could talk in private, so I went to the hallway with her. She started off with, "I know William's comments can be harsh, but he's just old-fashioned. Don't take it personally." I just stared at her. I said, "He called me lazy and useless in front of my kids." She responded, "Well, he doesn't mean it like that. You know how he is." I shot back, "Yeah, and I'm done pretending it's okay." She tried to guilt-trip me about keeping the family together, and how Kieran's just under a lot of pressure. I scoffed. He's under pressure from what? Sitting at the table while his dad trashes his wife. She looked incredibly uncomfortable, started playing with the zipper on her purse, and said, "You know, William just wants what's best for Kieran." I asked, "What about what's best for me or for the kids?" She didn't answer. She just said, "You're not like the women in our family. You don't just do what needs to be done." I looked at her and said, "Maybe that's the problem." She slammed the door on her way out. Kieran didn't say a word about any of it. He went to the fridge, grabbed a beer, and sat in front of the TV. The kids were in their room, watching something on their tablets with the volume way too loud, but I didn't care. I just sat at the dining table, scrolling through my old photos, trying to remember when things got this bad. It wasn't always like this. Or maybe it was, and I just ignored it. The next morning, I woke up and decided I was done being the default house manager. I didn't do laundry. I didn't pick up the dirty socks from under the couch. I didn't wipe the kitchen counters or unload the dishwasher. Kieran asked if I'd seen his blue shirt. I said, "Try the laundry basket." He glared at me like I'd just spit in his coffee. I just shrugged. The kids noticed, too. My daughter asked if she could have pancakes. I said, "Sure, if you want to help make them." She said, "Okay." And we did. Kieran didn't eat. Alexa texted me later saying, "You can't just stop doing things because you're upset." I ignored her. Throughout the day, I realized how much I actually do around here. Not in a look how much I sacrifice way, but in a literally nothing gets done unless I do it way. I started taking pictures, groceries, receipts, the piles of laundry, my calendar with all the appointments and school stuff. I put it all in a folder on my phone, not because I needed proof really, but because I wanted to see it for myself. Kieran saw me taking pictures and asked what I was doing. I told him, just documenting. He rolled his eyes and said, "You're so dramatic." By the end of the week, the vibe in the house was profoundly different. The kids started asking more questions. My daughter asked if we could go to Grandma's. My mom, not Alexa. I said, maybe, but Grandma lives like 3 hours away. It's not exactly a quick trip. My mom called that night, asked if everything was okay. I said, not really, but I'm figuring it out. She offered to come up, but I told her not yet. On Saturday, Kieran's dad called again. This time, I picked up because I wanted to hear what he'd say. He started in with the same old back in my day stuff. How women didn't run the house, they served their husbands. Blah blah blah. I said, well, it's not your day anymore. He said, you're going to ruin this family with your attitude. I looked at the phone and said, maybe it needs ruining. He hung up on me. Later that afternoon, Alexa came over again, this time with a bag of groceries and a fake smile plastered on her face. She said, I brought things for dinner. Let's just start over. I looked at the bag and said, I'm not cooking. She looked genuinely shocked. I said, if you want to cook, the kitchen's right there. She stammered, you're serious? I said, dead serious. She huffed, put the bag on the counter, and started chopping veggies. Kieran watched from the living room, didn't say a word. When dinner was ready, Alexa tried to act normal, but I could tell she was fuming. She made something with way too much garlic, and the kids didn't eat much. Kieran ate in silence, then shoved his chair back and left the table. My son asked if we could have pizza again tomorrow. After dinner, I went for a walk. Took my phone, left my watch at home. I just needed air. When I got back, Kieran was in the bedroom, scrolling through his phone. I asked if he wanted to talk. He said, about what? I said, about everything. He said, I'm tired. Can we not do this? I just said, sure. I left the room, shut the door, and went to sit in the hallway for a while. Not because I wanted to cry or anything, just because I didn't want to be anywhere near him. The next day, I started making plans. I made a list of everything I do around the house, everything the kids need, all the errands, everything. I started moving some of my stuff into the guest room. Kieran noticed and asked what I was doing. I said, just needed space. He laughed and said, you're being ridiculous. I just said, maybe. He tried to grab my arm as I walked by, but I pulled away. He slammed the door behind me. I took the kids out for ice cream that night. We sat in the car, ate our cones, and listened to music. My daughter asked if we were going on vacation. I said, not yet, but maybe soon. My son, ever practical, said, I hope it's somewhere with a pool. When we got home, Kieran's car was gone. I took the kids inside, got them ready for bed, and then sat on the couch, scrolling through my phone, looking up places to stay for a while. I texted Tara and asked if she knew anyone with a spare room. She said she'd check, but warned me it might take a bit. I said, that's fine. I'm not in a rush. But I was. I was done waiting for things to magically get better. So, that's where I was. Not dramatic, not crying, just done. I wasn't cooking, not cleaning, not running myself ragged for people who didn't care. If that makes me selfish, fine. If that makes me a burden, fine. I'd rather be a burden than a doormat. And yeah, I know this isn't over, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was the one making decisions, not just reacting. I don't know what's next, but I know I'm not going back to the way things were. Second update, so, here we are again. To be honest, I thought I was already at my breaking point. But apparently, there's always a little further to fall before you finally hit the floor and actually do something. Not gonna lie, this one's going to be long because I need to get all of this out, and I feel like if I don't, it'll just keep playing in my head on a painful loop. I don't know if anyone else ever notices this, but when things get tense in a house, even the dumbest stuff starts to feel like a huge deal. Like a missing phone charger or someone leaving the milk out suddenly feels monumental. That was this week. The house was messy. Not even bad messy, just normal life messy. Shoes everywhere, crumbs from the kids' snacks, laundry not folded, whatever. Except Kieran was acting like it was the end of the world. Every little thing, he'd sigh super loud or make some passive-aggressive comment about how no one respects the house. He said it to the kids. He said it to me. He even said it to his mom over speakerphone, which was wild because she just agreed with him and then started talking about how, when she was my age, she already had 3 kids and kept the house perfect and cooked every meal from scratch. I actually laughed, which she definitely did not like. So I just started not answering, or I'd say, then do it yourself. The kids even started parroting me, which honestly made me feel a little guilty, but also like, why should they think it's only my job? I could tell Kieran was getting more annoyed every single day. I started leaving early in the mornings, taking the kids out for breakfast, going to the park, just not being in the house. He texted a few times asking where we were. I just said, out. One time he called and asked if I was coming back for lunch, and I just flat out said, no. He hung up. Then on Tuesday, I came home and found Alexa in the kitchen, going through the fridge. She said she was helping out, since things seemed to be slipping. I just looked at her. You don't live here. She bristled. I'm just trying to keep things together. I said, you can go home. She slammed the fridge door shut and stormed out. Kieran walked in just as she was leaving, and he was mad. He asked what I said to his mom. I told him, honestly, that she was overstepping. He yelled, this is my family's house too. I fired back, then maybe your family should do the work, too. He raised his voice even more. I didn't back down. He got right up in my face, and for the first time ever, I just pushed him. Not hard, just enough to make him back off. He stared at me, then, in such a childish move, he slapped the wall behind me and stomped out. I just stood there, honestly surprised he didn't say anything else. After that, things were just cold. He started sleeping in the living room. The kids didn't ask why. I let them watch extra Netflix. I texted my mom and told her things were bad. She said, come down here for a while if you need. I said I would think about it. Tara texted me and said she'd found someone with a spare room if I needed to get away. I said, maybe soon. The next big thing was Thursday. Kieran came home in a mood. I could tell by the way he slammed the front door and didn't even take his shoes off. The kids were in the kitchen with me, working on a puzzle. He walked in, saw the mess, and just lost it. He yelled, is this how we live now? Just garbage everywhere. I calmly said, it's a puzzle, not garbage. He then shoved the entire puzzle off the table. My daughter started crying. I told him to get out. He snarled, this is my house. I shot back, not for long. He stormed out again. I picked up the pieces, put the kids in their room, and called my mom. I said, I think I need to get out. She said, come tomorrow. I said, okay. But I didn't want to just run. I wanted him to understand what he'd done. So I went into the living room, and he was sitting there, staring at the TV, but it wasn't even on. I stood in front of him and said, I'm taking the kids. He said, you can't just decide that. I looked him dead in the eye and said, watch me. He tried to grab my arm. I pulled away, and this time, I slapped his hand off me. I said, don't touch me. He glared at me and said, you're seriously blowing up this family over some stupid dinner? I took a deep breath. No. I'm blowing up this family because you treat me like trash and let your parents do it, too. He scoffed. This is all in your head. I said, I have proof. And I showed him the folder of pictures on my phone. All the stuff I do, all the receipts, the calendars, the appointments, everything. He looked at it for like 2 seconds, then tossed my phone onto the couch. I went to the kids' room, packed overnight bags, and told them we were going to Grandma's for a bit. My daughter asked if Daddy was coming. I said, not right now. My son, still thinking about the puzzle, asked, is this because of the puzzle? I hugged him. No, baby, it's not your fault. As I was leaving, Kieran tried to block the door. I just shoved past him. He yelled, you'll regret this. I turned back and said, we'll see. We drove to my mom's that night. 3 hours in the car, the kids fell asleep halfway. I just listened to music and tried not to think about what I'd just done. My mom hugged me for a long time when we got there, made up the guest room, and let me rant for like an hour. She looked at me seriously and said, you don't have to go back if you don't want to. The next day, Kieran started blowing up my phone. Calls, texts, voicemails, everything from come home to you're ruining everything to I'll change, just come back. I ignored him. Then Alexa started texting about how I was tearing the family apart and how William was beside himself. Then William called my mom's house phone, which I didn't even know he had, and left a message about how I'm a disgrace, and he always knew I'd do something like this. My mom picked up the phone, listened for a bit, and then just unplugged it. I spent the weekend just being. Went to the park with the kids, made pancakes with my mom, watched movies, let the kids stay up late. I realized how incredibly easy it was to breathe when no one was judging me for simply existing. Kieran tried to guilt-trip me again on Monday. Said the kids needed their dad. Said I was being unfair. Said I was making a scene. I sent him a picture of the calendar with all the appointments he never went to and said, you can come see them if you want, but you're not welcome at my mom's. He texted back, you can't keep me from my kids. I just replied, try me. My mom said I could stay as long as I wanted. I told her I needed to figure out next steps. I texted Tara and said, let me know if that spare room's still available. She said it was. I guess the thing that really broke the last bit of hope I had was when Kieran texted my daughter's old tablet, the one she barely uses, but he must have known the number from setting it up once, and said, tell mommy to call daddy. She looked at me, her little brow furrowed, and asked, do I have to? I told her, no baby, you don't have to do anything that makes you uncomfortable. So that's it. I'm out. I'm not going back. He can keep his parents and his house and his attitude. I'll take peace and pancakes at my mom's over walking on eggshells every single day. I haven't blocked him completely yet because I want the kids to at least have the option to talk to their dad, but I'm not making it easy for him either. Maybe next time he's tempted to laugh at me in front of his dad, he'll remember what it's like to come home to an empty house and a cold pizza box. Everyone wants me to come back or explain myself or apologize for making things awkward. But not one of them, not one, asked how I was actually feeling, or if the kids were happy, or if I needed support. It's all about them. Their comfort, their image, their peace and quiet. I think the thing that really got to me, though, is watching Kieran try to handle everything I used to do. I didn't even take that much with me. Just the kids, a few changes of clothes, their favorite toys, my charger, and the important stuff like birth certificates and the insurance cards. Not trying to be dramatic, just being practical. But suddenly, he's texting like, where are the kids' medical records? What's the login for the school app? When is the next dentist appointment? He's asking about grocery lists, about where to find clean towels, about what time the trash pickup is. I ignored most of it, but for the big stuff, I sent him info. I'm not trying to make the kids' lives harder, but I'm also not going out of my way to make his easier. Figure it out like I did. Alexa tried to guilt-trip me into coming home again. Said William was losing sleep over his family falling apart. I just said, Maybe he should have thought about that before he called me a burden in my own kitchen. She said, "You're being petty." I said, "Maybe." She said, "You'll regret this." I just replied, "Not as much as I'd regret staying." The money stuff got weird, too. Kieran and I always split things in a way that worked for us. I had some bills, he had others. Groceries were whoever had time. Suddenly, he's realizing how much actually gets done that he never saw. He called and said, "You need to send money for the mortgage." I said, "You live there. The kids are with me. You figure it out." He got mad. Said I was being cruel. I said, "You wanted to be the man of the house, right? Act like it." He hung up. My mom high-fived me. The kids haven't asked about him much. My daughter wanted to call him once, so I let her. They talked for 5 minutes. She looked at me, a tiny smile, and said, "Can we go back to Grandma's puzzle now?" William tried one last time. He actually showed up at my mom's door. My mom answered, told him he could talk to her on the porch, not inside. He said, "You're tearing this family apart." She looked him dead in the eye and said, "Then maybe you should have treated her like family." He got red in the face, stomped back to his car, and left. I watched from the window, felt absolutely nothing. I even got a message from the school asking about the kids, if everything was okay, if they needed anything. I said, "We're fine." I was honest about the move, that things were changing, but the kids would be back soon. The school counselor said, "If you need anything, let us know." I almost cried, because it was the first time anyone actually asked what we needed, not what was easiest for everyone else. So, what now? I don't know. I'm not moving back. I'm not going to keep pretending for a man who only cared about keeping his dad happy, or for a family who saw me as a maid and a scapegoat. I'm not doing it for the image, for the holidays, for the fake smiles and the ugly dinners where everyone whispers but no one helps. I'm not saying it's easy. Honestly, it's a pain figuring out all the details, and I still have to sort out school stuff and probably a million little things I haven't thought about yet. But I'd rather do all of that than be a ghost in my own life. Kieran keeps texting. Sometimes he gets mad. Sometimes he begs. Sometimes he sends me memories from his phone like that'll make me forget all the stuff he said. I just mute him. I told him he could see the kids, but only if he came to my mom's and only if he could keep his temper in check. So far, he hasn't even tried. I don't know what's next exactly. I know I'm not going back. I know I'm not apologizing. And I know the phone will probably keep ringing for a while. But the best thing is, I don't have to answer. Thanks for sticking with this all the way to the end. It's messy, but honestly, that's just life right now. Tell me, if you were in my shoes, what would your first step be towards building a new life? I really want to know.